Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video, going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. In today's video, that'll be taking us up to around the 28th of December, so after Christmas. Now, we've still got this idea playing around that we could get some really cold weather as we get out beyond Christmas. It looks like as we get up to Christmas, we're going to turn it cooler, going to be starting very mild next week, then turning cooler over Christmas itself. Not particularly cold, I have to say, just cooler. Could be some wintry showers in Scotland, but I think most places will be snow free for Christmas Day. It's after Christmas, just those days after Christmas, 27th, 28th, 29th, that I'm going to be watching out for some really cold weather to potentially, I say potentially, come down from the north. It's not a done deal. So I'll show you the charts in a moment. Before I get on with that though, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on most of the pages at GavsWebVids.com. Have a browse through the widgets, and if there's any articles that you're interested in, just click through. You'll be able to go off and read those articles. There's green keyword ads on most of the pages. If you right cursor over green keywords, they display ads. If you click through the word, you go to the advertiser's website, you support GavsWebVids.com when you do that. There's yellow contextual ads, they're weather related, so click through those if there's anything there that you're interested in. Gav Shop is still open, will be until Christmas Eve, so you can do your last minute Christmas shopping at Amazon. Just click through the Amazon banners in Gav Shop, go off to Amazon, do Christmas shopping as normal, don't need to do anything else. Because you've clicked through from GavsWebVids to Amazon, we get a revenue fee on the things that you're purchasing. Thanks very much for getting involved and doing that. Right, let's start off with the 500 millimeter height anomaly flow charts. We've got the ECMWF on the left, the GFS is over on the right, 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere where high pressure and low pressure are developing and being moved around by a jet stream running above. Blue is extrapolating to low pressure, red is extrapolating to high pressure. These are the mean flow charts for 8 to 10 days time, so this does take us up to around the 28th of December. First thing to say is that a cold trough is coming back into America. So it's like America is going to be having a very cold end to December with a deep trough of low pressure bringing winter back there. Then we've got this ridge of high pressure in the central part of the Atlantic, so the jet stream is doing something like that on both the ECMWF and the GFS, rising around that ridge in the central Atlantic, and that does push up towards southern parts of Greenland as well. And then the jet stream comes around this trough down into the British Isles, and that's what could well be bringing the colder air through the country as we get through into the post-Christmas period. We could start finding that cold air digging in with that trough of low pressure, swinging winds into the north. Now, it's not absolutely perfect. What we need to get a perfect scenario is to take this red in the central part of the Atlantic and southern Greenland and centre it right over top of the pole and down into Greenland itself. If we do that, then we can really push this cold trough through the country and set it up to the south. It's just not quite absolutely perfect to deliver cold weather. The other problem is these yellow, I should say orange colours sitting to the south of the country, high pressure ridging through the central part of the Mediterranean. That's never a particularly good sign for us to get cold weather. What we need to do, as I say, is take all of this red in the central Atlantic, stick it up over top of the pole and around Greenland, and then push this cold trough through into southern parts of Europe. If we can get this cold trough centred in the Mediterranean, so we're around Italy, then we can really start to open the floodgates to that cold air. As it is, the signals are there for something to be going on after Christmas, some cold weather to be coming through. But I just want to see the pattern get a little bit, evolve a little bit more in the direction that it needs to evolve to really deliver a cold pattern before I'll be super confident about this. But let's have a look at the GFS temperature and precipitation on Sol. We're starting off very mild today, really mild day. Temperature could be 14 degrees in the southeast day, 57 Fahrenheit. They will be turning cooler as we get through to the end of the week and the start of the weekend, go a little bit below average. Through the weekend, they'll pick up again. So the start of next week will be very mild once more. Now, this is Christmas Day just here, and it's around Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, but the temperatures do slide down, or take their third slide down, I should say, into somewhat cooler air. So Christmas Day, probably a bright day, feeling cooler and fresher, and And a pretty nice day, really. A lot of dry weather. Could be some wintry showers in the far north of Scotland, but generally quite a bit of decent weather. Now, it's just beyond Christmas that we've got this uncertainty. If we look out a little bit beyond Christmas, we see that, yes, we are getting some members of the GFS temperature ensembles going very cold after Christmas. This is the 27th, just here, and by then, quite a few of these members of the ensemble are going down towards -10 at 850 HPA. That's really cold Arctic air. But you notice there's still enough members of the ensemble that are keeping it mild. All of these coloured lines up here. There's enough there to be bringing this into question, be bringing it into doubt. The overall trend is downwards as we go out beyond Christmas, or has been for the last few updates. These ensembles are gradually cooling. But there's still enough mild members there that we've got to be careful about this and not go rushing off with the idea that we're in for a big freeze after Christmas. We could be in for a big freeze after Christmas, I've got to say that, but I don't want you to rush away with the idea that this is by any means a done deal. Now, have a look at the rainfall spikes. Interestingly, we turn it wetter actually through the latter stages of time. Not a great deal of rain coming up to Christmas. Remember, this Christmas Day just here. We're bringing a cold front through on Christmas Eve, so it could be quite wet for a time then. But not a great deal of rain up to Christmas. Beyond Christmas, we've got quite a few precipitation spikes showing up there, and some of these undoubtedly will be associated with these milder members of the ensemble, but I'm sure some of them are probably associated with this colder plunge actually. So that brings in the prospect of snow, of course. If we've got precipitation spikes with upper air temperatures of -10 at 850 HPA, you're going to get snow. So we've got to be watching out for that as well if we do manage to pull off these colder conditions. So let's look at the charts. This is for Christmas Eve from the midnight run of the GFS model. And there's the high pressure reaching through Europe. That's one of the complicating factors that we've got to get rid of. On Christmas Eve, it's generally quite a mild day, really. We're going to be bringing a cold front across the country. That'll take a band of rain probably in the morning, and then it'll brighten up through the course of the afternoon, and that'll turn it cooler and fresher. Notice this high pressure ridging in the central part of the Atlantic. This is the chart for Christmas Day. Quite a windy day. A low pressure to the north of Scotland. Isobars are backing off towards the southern coast of Greenland, so it will be cool. We're bringing the first push of cooler air through this, but not desperately cold by any means. Temperatures in the south probably 6 or 7 degrees, in the north probably 3 or 4. Cold enough for snow over the mountains in Scotland, and there'll be severe gales as well probably for the northern part of Scotland also. And as I say, quite a windy day for most parts of the country, certainly feeling cooler than we've had it. Now, as we go over into Boxing Day, that low pressure moves off into Scandinavia. The winds start to back into the north then, more into the north. It's probably a cold front coming through here, and it's probably going to be behind that, but we've got that proper cold Arctic air coming in. So a cold front may bring some rain, sleet or snow to northern Scotland. Otherwise, again, Boxing Day, probably a bright and breezy day with a fair amount of dry weather. Now, moving through into the 27th, that's when the cold air really starts to push down on the midnight run of the GFS. So there's a cold front here on this elongation in the isobars. That probably brings a band of rain, sleet or snow down across the country, and then that's when we open the floodgates, follow the isobars back, and the air originates from the North Pole. The high pressure there in the central part of the Atlantic is the driving factor really to force this cold air down across the country. Get through to December 28th, and we really have opened the floodgates on day 10 to that northerly, a bitterly cold northerly coming down across the country, high pressure reaching through the central part of the Atlantic. Notice the heights have lowered across Central Europe. That's what I was talking about, the complicating factor through the Med with that high pressure. We've got to get rid of that and set up low pressure through the Mediterranean. That has happened as we get through to day 10. So that's allowing that cold air to really force its way down across the country. Temperatures by that point will probably be around freezing all day, and certainly there will be snow showers in the north and the east. And of course, if you was to get some sort of disturbance within this unstable northerly flow, some sort of polar low or something, then you could start thinking about perhaps more persistent snow coming into the north. That's the GFS operational. This is the GFS parallel. Remember, we've got the two versions of the GFS model running alongside each other at the moment. The parallel run will become the main operational version as we get through into January, but at the moment they're running alongside each other, so that's why this is the parallel. So for Christmas Day, again, we're bringing down that cool northwesterly flow across the country, the high pressure in the central part of the Atlantic. Don't think it's going to be a widespread white Christmas by any means on Christmas Day. There could be wintry showers in the far north. Otherwise, it's going to be a very nice day with a lot of sunshine. Just need to wrap up warm because it'll be chillier than we've been used to. Boxing Day, again, very similar. Probably bringing some sort of a cold front into the north of Scotland, which could bring some rain, sleet or snow. Otherwise, bright and breezy, a few showers scattered about. Cooler, but not cold. Now, here comes that area of low pressure. The parallel GFS makes more of this low pressure. This is probably the cold front that the operational GFS wants to drop south, but the parallel is making more of it and turning it into an actual area of low pressure. But it's the same idea, but ahead of it, it's cool, but not desperately cold. Behind it, that's where you get the really cold Arctic air plunging in. So this is the Saturday the 27th, this low pressure down across the country, rain, sleet or snow moving southwards. We go through to day 10, which is going to be Saturday the 28th, and look at that, we really have opened the floodgates to that bitterly cold north to northeast wind. The low pressure here in the south is clearing away. Yes, we're really opening the floodgates. Look at all the high pressure through the northern Atlantic. That's properly going up towards Greenland, that high pressure, so that really is forcing this very cold air down. And there's some sort of storm going on in this area of low pressure, so you would have to think about snow down in the south with that, but let's not get carried away with that. We go through to Monday the 29th, and yes, we're firmly locked in then with the GFS parallel into a very cold northerly flow. There'd be snow coming down with this. It's an unstable air mass, lots of high pressure ridging through the central Atlantic into the north of the Atlantic. And it just continues really. This is how we go up to New Year's Day, the 1st of January 2015, still in a very cold scenario, and the winds are actually backing in towards the east and the northeast with this as we're trying to ridge high pressure towards Scandinavia. That's sort of indicative of potentially quite a prolonged cold spell starting to set up. Easterly winds starting to come in, feeding snow in from the east to southern parts of the country probably, as opposed to the northerly. If you have a look at the upper air temperatures for New Year's Day, really cold start to 2015, the -10 isotherm thermally across the country. That is bitterly cold, sub-zero temperatures really, and there'd be snow in the north and the east with that one. So on the face of it, the GFS is still sort of going for this quite big time. Really, if I just very quickly just show you the situation in the Mediterranean, by the way, to show that we've lost all the heights in the Med, generated low pressure, so that's near perfect to get cold air properly coming down across the country once you get low pressure there. So the GFS seems to be really going for this sort of idea that it's turning cold, although just as I've recorded this, the 6 o'clock run, the GFS has come through, and that's a good deal milder, less intense with this cold spell. So the GFS is swinging about, the GFS ensembles not in agreement yet that we're going to pull this off. And then we've got the ECMWF, of course. Now this generates as the best model, really. It rates as the best model, better than the GFS, although there's not a great deal in it, I don't think. But this is the chart for Christmas Day. And again, it's that idea about pulling in this cooler northwesterly wind for Christmas Day. There could be wintry showers in the north of Scotland, but not widespread snow by any means. We go through to Boxing Day. We're trying to generate this ridge through the Atlantic, send it up towards Greenland. Winds are trying to go into the north as well, probably bring cold air down to Scotland with some snow showers. But we don't quite pull it off, and actually as we go through to Saturday the 28th, we're bringing an area of low pressure through the country with relatively mild air. I'm not sure why we don't pull it off, really. We've got quite a bit of high pressure to the south of Greenland. The main problem, I think, is that we don't lower the heights across Europe. I said that is the thing we've got to get rid of that high pressure through the Mediterranean. We don't really do it, and that just stops this cold air coming down from the north. So if we compare it to, say, the GFS, where we've got all this low pressure in the Mediterranean, if we compare that to the ECMWF, we see that actually we keep the ridging going through the Med and southern parts of Europe. It's a very subtle difference, but it's an important difference. You've got to lower the heights across Europe, preferably set up an area of low pressure around Italy, and then you can really start to tap in to very cold air from the north and the northeast. We just don't quite put it off on the east, and that's why we've got to be cautious about this. It's not a done deal. The hints are there that there's some cold weather coming up, potentially very cold weather coming up between Christmas and New Year, but we've just got to wait until we get these models more into agreement, I think, before we can have a great deal of confidence about it. Now, the ECM ensembles are going for a cooling trend in DeBilt. I don't often show these charts, but this is the temperature chart for DeBilt in Holland, just over the other side of the North Sea. And this is Christmas Day just here. We can see that we've got that cooling trend taking place. And then there's a bit of a split within the ECM ensembles, really. Some ensemble members do go very, very cold after Christmas, going up towards the New Year, which is this part of the chart just here. But some of them do keep it quite mild, and that would be the sort of solution that we were just looking at with the ECM operational run. And just to complicate things further, this chart is the ensemble mean of the ECM ensemble. So it's taken all of these lines just here that you see on this chart, and it's generated a mean 500 millibar flow chart from all of those ensemble members. And you see that for Saturday the 27th, for instance, the ensemble mean is to bring this northerly wind down across the country, generate this high pressure through the central part of the Atlantic, lower the heights across Europe. If we go through to the day ensemble mean, and again you see that overall it's a cool, or it's a cold scenario. We've got high pressure ridging through the Atlantic. Remember, some members of the ensemble would be like the operational ECM and bring us mild weather on Saturday the 28th, but overall the idea from the ECM ensembles is to ridge this high pressure through the central Atlantic and have this area of low pressure to the east, bring down this very cold northerly wind, lower the heights, notice, through central parts of the Mediterranean. So it's a complicated picture. What we can say with quite a good degree of confidence, even though it's some way away, it's still a week away, but quite a good degree of confidence, is that Christmas should be turning cooler. We'll start next week on a very mild note. We'll turn it cooler on Christmas Eve. Christmas Day, probably a coolish, brightish sort of day with any chance of showers in the north. It's after that that we have this chance. It is a good chance, I think, on the basis of what we're seeing, but not a done deal, that we could turn it very cold between Christmas and New Year. I'll be keeping you posted about it at GavsWebBiz, because it's a really interesting time, so keep checking back for more updates. But that's how the latest snapshot is looking. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.